Good afternoon, evening, morning, etc., everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this enablement session. Today we have Francis Potter with a little show and tell of a holiday project Francis put together with Claude AI and MongoDB. Please remember to keep the content safe. No customer names, no financial information, no talking about beta or alpha or unannounced features. Otherwise, I will hand it off to you, Francis. Take it away. Thank you.
Woohoo! Okay, so I've been on this little, I think like a lot of us, kind of exploratory journey about AI and its role in software and its role in our work at GitLab. And we all have these great experiences, and I think everybody's kind of learning different things. And so I want to share a little bit of what I've learned recently, and maybe you all have learned other things or some of the same things, or maybe I'm the last one to figure some of this stuff out. That's entirely possible. So the question I was asking myself was, it's great, some of the demos and stuff and some of the things that you can do with the AI-powered chat capabilities like those provided by Claude or various, ChatGPT or any of these sort of online things. And you can actually like upload documents and analyze them and stuff. And we've seen lots of demos of that kind of thing. And that's pretty awesome. I mean, it's super, super powerful. And I'm sure we're all using those capabilities in creative and interesting ways every day. One of the questions I've asked since first seeing ChatGPT was, this is cool, but how can you actually integrate it with software? How can you actually have it, query a database? And I've seen there are examples in the wild, obviously, of that, including GitLab Duo. But I kind of wanted to understand, how does that work? How do you actually do it? So I decided over Christmas, because I'm the kind of person who geeks out on code over Christmas, to give it a shot and try and build a tool that would use an API. It would use the Claude API to actually work with the database. And so that's what I created. And it's a little thing, and it only took me a couple of hours to build. So this is obviously like really, really powerful stuff that is, I think, truly sort of game changing, even though that's sort of a cliche. So what I have, let me share screen here. This is just a dorky little tool. It's not anything fancy or special, but it kind of, I don't know, sort of helps me to envision the possibilities and stuff. I call it Flutterby because it's like you're a social butterfly, right? Butterfly, Flutterby, I don't know. And essentially, it's a contact memory assistant. So that's the use case is when I was running my business and I was doing a lot of professional networking, and I'd meet lots of people and I would, interested in them. And I'd say, oh, where did you work? Where do you work? Where did you used to work? And, talk about personal stuff like, do you have kids or, whatever. And then, of course, the next time I saw that same person, I'd forget everything. So I started writing stuff down. And I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to have this in a database. So this is this is all fake data, but it's a database of just notes about contacts, right? And so I found myself thinking, well, it'd be great to be able to kind of query that, using natural language, right? So I built a little thing that does that. So here's the example. It's called Flutterby. Now, just to show you what's happening here for the geeks, I'm running MongoDB as just the database on the back end. So this could be a multi-user situation. It could be a large scale situation. It could be anything. In this case, it's like 50 records and it's local. It could just as easily be in a file, but it's sort of the point, the thought that matters. So if I go in here now, you'll have to excuse this. It's not pretty. It's in a good old fashioned text terminal. But this is actually now accessing the Claude, the Anthropic API to run the Claude Sonnet model, the same one that we can use in the Claude desktop app and everything. Only it also has a tool associated with it to query the MongoDB that's in the Docker container. Did somebody have a question in chat? I want to voice a question. All right, I'll keep going. So essentially, it introduces itself first, and it says, "Hey, I can look up information about your contacts and whatever. What would you like to know?" Okay, well, do I know anyone named Alex? Okay, and maybe I do, maybe I don't. We'll see. This is fake data, by the way, because obviously I do know people named Alex. So it's super slow. And so what it's doing is first went out to Claude, sent it my question, and then Claude came back with a request to use the tool that I've developed, which is in the local code base. And 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 it also sent me a little message saying, let me search, blah, blah, blah. And then it uses the tool locally to query the database, sends the results of the query back to Claude to interpret for me. So there's actually 2 round trips to the API for this. We don't know anyone named Alex. Okay, well, do I know anyone named Paul? Let's see. And okay, let me search for context named Paul. So it's slow, and it's a lot slower than the sort of chat-based UIs that we've seen, partly because it's not doing any streaming. So it's waiting for the entire response to come back before it starts putting anything up. But that's obviously, Paul Walker. Okay. Oh. Interesting. So we got some facts here about Paul. Now, if you want to see what's actually happening behind the scenes, what was the query you ran for that? Super easy to just find out the query. And so this is how we can see, hey, this is actual MongoDB JSON query that's being performed against the database. And it pulled up this guy named Paul, and it's got some information about him. Now, this is pretty cool, but this is sort of similar to just querying a document, right? But what if I wanted to make an update? Let's see, Paul, it says Paul has grown children, a son in Toronto. Oh, Paul's son is named Jerry. He just finished university and is traveling in Africa. Maybe I just talked to Paul, right? So here's some new information. And now it actually can perform an update to that database. And it already has the ID, it performs the update. So this is a full-fledged database system that could be multi-user, that's all entirely driven by natural language, and that took almost no time to build. So if you want to see what it looks like, it's really just, there isn't even a subfolder here. It's really just there's just one program. Here is the flutterby.py that does all the querying and everything, runs the tools. And then the tools definition, I've actually put in a YAML file called tools.yaml that says what the capabilities are. So query the data, add a note. Those are basically the 2 capabilities that it has. And so it's actually working in the MongoDB using the Claude API. So any questions on that? Thoughts, comments, observations? Anyone awake?
Not really awake,
I think this is really cool. I'm constantly forgetting information about people. I'm just bad with names, so I think I might struggle there if there was like a face.
Yeah, well, I thought about calling this bad with names. I thought that would be a fun name for the tool. So yeah, and as I was developing this, I was thinking I picked MongoDB just because it's so flexible, right? You can actually define new kinds of data in it without even having to change the schema or anything. But if you think about tools that we use, like software that we use, that either our customers develop or that we use, and how the opportunity to easily change the way we interact with it, an example, that I thought of is Maven Link that we use for our professional services. What if there were this kind of interface to that, where you could just say, oh, hey, I finished my week, whatever, rather than, using the web UI. Or, oh, hey, I want to see a report of the blah, 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 instead of having to click around and find the report. And it's actually fairly easy to build stuff like that. That's what's kind of amazing. So the next thing I did, it doesn't end there. As I said, what about code itself? This is a database, but what about code itself? What if I want to actually instead of querying data, I want to look at a project, a Git repository, and I want to understand it. And I found myself actually needing this repeatedly in work with customers where we get a body of code that's in some other language that I've never worked in before, and I just kind of want to get the lay of the land a little bit for that project before setting up their CI/CD. And so I created another tool, which I call RepoZ, and there it is, RepoZ. And so what RepoZ is a way to explore the contents of a Git repository in a local file system with AI. And this is actually an installable, downloadable little tool here that you can use. So I can actually run, and I've actually installed RepoZ as a regular command line tool itself. So I can run RepoZ on this application here. And this is, again, using the Claude API, but now instead of looking at the database, it's actually looking at this application. And it's explaining kind of how it works. So I'm showing the contents of the root directory, blah, 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 Flutterby tools, blah, 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 blah. And I said, oh, I know, let's say, I could say, oh, it's got tools. This looks like an AI thing. What AI API does it use? And it's actually going to read the code now. It's actually going to figure out which code files it needs to read in order to answer the question, and then read the code files and then explain what's going on with them. So based on the code and dependencies, this project uses Anthropic's Claude API, right? And it actually says kind of what the configuration is and everything. So this is super helpful in kind of exploring, and this I found immediately practical, right? In terms of understanding sort of what I've done, what other people have done inside Git projects. And all it's really doing is reading a directory listing, reading individual files that it decides what files to read. But I added one other capability to it, which is the capability to do a Git diff. And this is super helpful. I haven't made any changes here, but I can actually do suggest a commit message based on the diff. And then if you're actually working in Git, you can actually get a really nice little commit message there. Now, this is a lot of what Do a Chat does. I'm not pretending to, I'm definitely reinventing the wheel. But it's at least kind of, I don't know, it was interesting to sort of explore how these tools can work with the AI. One of the things that I realized as I'm working on this is not only is this kind of approach useful in our own work to have tools that can use the large language models, but also this is a lot of what our customers are doing. Our customers are now going through that process of figuring out how do we integrate AI into our products or into our software. And so for us to really be able to provide excellent service to our customers, I think it's really helpful to have kind of an understanding of what that looks like from a software perspective. So the last thing I did was I said, well, how does GitLab do it, right? GitLab has the Duo workflow service. And I'm like, okay, I want to understand this better. What if I run my RepoZ thing on Duo workflow service and kind of understand a little bit better what it's doing and how it actually works? I mean, I kind of know what it is, but how is it actually doing what it does? And instead of having to read through the code myself, I forked Duo workflow service here, and I can run RepoZ on it. And now, instantly, I get this AI that can help explain any kind of software to me, just based on looking at the Git repo, and I can, find where things are in the code. Here, okay, it's and this is, by the way, this is safe because this is source available. I did all this from my personal laptop, my personal account over Christmas, by the way. So, oh, it's a Python application. Cool, I know Python, right? But what LLM APIs does it use? Okay, and it should be able to figure out which files to look in. Might take it a couple of tries. It's actually able to, it found a file called LLM Factory, and so it's going to read that file to figure out what. Oh yeah, there we go. Uses Google's Vertex API and directly through the Anthropic API. Okay, so I'm already learning things about this. I would have had to dig around for a while to figure it out myself. That's already explaining it. One of the questions that I asked this, because I was I'm trying to understand the architecture of Duo workflow, was, is this a web application such as using Flask or Django, right? Like, is it a web app? What is this thing? Like, what's the architecture? And it's going to read whatever files it needs to read. And I didn't tell it what files to read. It's just using its language model to understand what files to read. No, it's not a web application. It uses gRPC and implements a gRPC service. And the other thing I did over the holidays was I was like, oh, I've never built a gRPC service. What is that? And I can actually ask questions about that right now in this chat, in the context of this project, which is the Duo workflow service, which of course is our big thing. I should add, in looking through the Duo workflow service, this is really impressive work that our engineering team is doing. I think, I mean, as a Python developer myself and an AI enthusiast, what I'm seeing is really great attention to security, privacy, and detail and flexibility in terms of building out kind of the next generation of the GitLab product line. So it's kind of exciting to just explore it and have AIs help to explore it, because it would have taken me forever to like just click it around in the files. Anyway, that's what I got. That's just my little holiday tinkering that I thought I would share. Would love to hear any thoughts or ideas or anything that any of you all have done in the same sphere.
I think this is really cool. Thanks for sharing. I think, it's kind of inspired me to maybe take some more time to look at our own kind of like tooling and seeing how we can apply, we're all very smart people here, and, the toolbox that they've created, and look into that and building on top of it, I guess.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I think I missed you mentioning this earlier, but the two tools you showed, are they both pip installable?
RepoZ is a pipx package. You can just do pipx install RepoZ. Flutterby, because it actually has the dependency on MongoDB. I haven't actually published it to PyPy, but you could clone the repo, run Docker Compose. There's the instructions are in the README. I can give you the address to both. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both super cool. So it's cool to see how you're leveraging Claude and all the AI features. So it's cool to see how everyone's kind of trying to implement something with the AI tools we have available.
Yeah. One of the cool things that's what's interesting about this is how sort of self-referential it can be, right? Like literally, I was using the Flutterby tool and I said, what other capabilities would you like to have, or that would be helpful here? And it said, for example, when I asked, how many contacts do I have in my contact database? Spun for a while and it said 53. And then I said, what query did you do? And it said, oh, I just did an empty query to pull all the documents. And I said, well, does MongoDB have a way to count the documents without having to query them all? And it said, oh yeah, that's the count function. And I said, well, can you do that? And it said, no, you haven't built that tool yet. And then I said, well, suggest the tool definition and the Python code for that tool. And it gave me that. So like you quickly get in this mode where like software can actually work on itself like while you're using it. It's crazy how quickly it sort of can, escalate in power. So
yeah, I've played around with that a little bit in the past with some of the different AI tools, and it's been cool. One, to kind of do what you've been doing of exploring, like, hey, how do I do this thing? And then providing an example. But then as you go through, to be like, okay, I've done this. What's the next step? Or how would I approach it like this? Or even if it's hallucinating, sometimes you could still like kind of steer it in a better direction to be like, oh, I tried this. This actually didn't work. How about this option instead? And yeah, it's cool to see like I think you and I learn very similarly when it comes to coding of like I need to see the like what it looks like. I need to see the code. So that's super useful when I'll type in like, hey, I want to see an example of this library implemented. What does the code look like? And that speeds up my time to building something than just digging through docs for several hours.
exactly. In fact, I think that the era of actually reading documentation is pretty much over now, because you can more easily have a conversation with the documentation through the LLMs or with the code. One of the things that's also interesting is that because a lot of what you're developing in this world are prompts and tool definitions for the model to use, you're kind of programming in English. And that's, like literally like for reposing, my prompt says, your goal is to help us explore the Git repository and understand it better so that we can make improvements to it. Right. And so like literally you're kind of programming it the way you would give instructions to another person. And it's an interesting kind of mindset to be in. Right. Anyway, that's all I got. Back to you, Glenn.
Let me unmute. Awesome. Thanks. Good stuff, Francis. I liked it. It's great what we're using the tools to make ourselves more efficient. So excellent work. Thanks for showing us all that stuff. If you could drop a link to anything that is okay to make public in the enablement doc, that'd be good. Be awesome. And so folks can take a look at that. Otherwise, any other questions, comments, concerns, fears about Skynet? What are we doing here?
It's pretty, the last bit that you said about having Claude kind of tell you how to make it better is a very interesting thought. It feels like performing surgery on a doctor and then telling you how to fix them. It's very it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a good friend of mine who's not a GitLab person, but a good friend of mine. I was chatting with him, and he's been exploring having AI models talk to each other and experimenting with different models, having conversations with each other using these tools and all these things. And I said, I mentioned that I was doing this stuff, and he said, "Oh, just ask it what tools it wants." And I'm like, "Whoa!" It's like, and sure enough, I asked Reposy, like, what tools would be helpful here for the goal of exploring a Git repo, right? And it said, "Oh, I would love to be able to do a Git log operation. I can't do that right now. You haven't given me that tool, right?" Obviously, you got to be careful because you don't want to give it like any shell command, right? But it's fairly easy to just sort of say, "Okay, well, I'll give you that capability," right?
Yeah, you can at least deny its requests. Yeah, if it's asking for too much, prevent an upgrade situation.
One of the things I've started doing, and I didn't get very far with it, but with anything that does updates, would be to actually in the prompt say, make sure you verify with the user that they want to perform this update before you perform it. And that actually, I did get it once to actually do another cycle where like, are you sure you want me to do this? And it's fuzzy logic, right? But there's still ways of kind of protecting against doing anything too destructive by just making sure that your tool is trained, not trained, but is prompted appropriately.
Excellent. Anything else, folks? Well, if you think of anything, you know where to find Francis. Just a Slack message away. So there you go.
Oh, come to Victoria.
I like that plan better. That's a better plan.
Okay. Cheers, everyone. Thanks.
All right. Thanks all. Thanks for joining us.
You
I'll have
guys.
the playlist here in a bit. So thank you.
Bye, everyone.